How's everybody feeling? Tired. I feel you. I'm tired too. It's Saturday. You know, we all got out of our comfort zone a little bit, but that's all right. I'm happy to be out here hanging out with everybody. So first of all, just like she was saying, I know we did a little bit of a block of instruction, so we've kind of been sitting for a little bit. So do me a little bit of a favor. Everybody just kind of stand up here for a minute. Give yourself just a little bit of space. There we go. Yeah, just stretch it out. Just kind of relax, take a little bit of breather. This is going to be very casual. Feel free to stop and ask me any questions or anything as we're going through. Just raise your hand here a little bit. Like he said, he introduced us by our ranks, and we're all friends here. My name is Ryan. That'll do just fine. So if anybody has a question, just feel free to throw your hand up there real quick, and we'll talk about it as we're going through. But the physician that was just standing up here said a lot of things that are really going to kind of complement what we're going to talk about here as far as competitiveness for medical school, as far as different funding, how cost can be a factor, how the Army can help you out with that, and also ways to go about getting into the specific residency or specialty that you want to in a more competitive way. So with that, it's my understanding everybody in here is mostly interested in becoming a physician for the most part. We don't have anybody that's possibly going down like the dental school or the veterinary route or anything like that? Okay, fantastic. Yeah, that just gives me a good idea of where to start and go through everything here. So I'm just going to ask everybody a couple of questions here. Who has kind of an idea right now what they think that they might want to do as far as a specialty, or has a specific reason why they think that they want to get into medicine in the first place? Please? Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sorry, what's your name?
I'm Daniela.
Daniela, nice to meet you. Okay, what you got for me? What kind of physician you want to be?
I think oncology or neurology.
Oncology or neurology, fantastic. And is there a specific reason that kind of draws you towards that? Maybe an experience with someone in your family, or it's just something that you feel like it's a problem and you want to be part of the solution?
Yeah, exactly. Just like, I just want to be like a part of the solution.
That's a great reason. Yeah. Having a personal interest is a great reason to get into medicine because, like she said, it's a very long route, and if you're not invested all the way, you're going to have a hard time getting all the way across the finish line. How about anybody else? Please. Forensic pathology or OBGYN. Okay. And is there something specific that draws you to those fields?
Well, I've always been interested in female anatomy, or I've also been interested in causes of death.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. Who else is willing to share? On the end here, what's your name? Evie? All right, nice to meet you, Evie.
Nice to meet you too. I want to go into neurology.
Neurology, okay, and what is it about neurology that interests you?
My mom recently had a brain surgery, and so I just wanted to see how that works,
Yeah, no, that's a great reason. So you have a personal interest, a driving factor that kind of leads you down the path that you're going towards. Anybody else willing to share real quick? We'll just work our way back here, please.
Immunology.
I'm sorry?
Immunology.
Okay, fantastic. And what is it that draws you to that?
It's more specifically autoimmune diseases and allergies because I've suffered from that pretty immensely.
Okay, so yeah, very, very personal reference. But yeah, that's a great reason. Who else?
Libby.
Libby?
I'm going to be a pediatric endocrinologist.
Okay, and what is it about pediatrics specifically that interests you?
My mom's had thyroid cancer her whole life.
Okay. Yeah, so again, personal interest, a lot of driving, motivating factors that lead us towards that. So one thing that I want everybody to kind of take away from what we've been talking about here as a group is there are a lot of different specialties, a lot of different roads that you can go down to developing a specialty. And one of the things that I heard someone ask about earlier was if you can change that specialty as you're going through. So, as you're going through and you're kind of building things up, you're going to develop, a strong interest, but you'll also get exposure throughout medical school to a lot of different fields you can go down. Because it's very easy from where you're at right now, the world's a big place and there's all these opportunities and there's all these different things that you can do. They're all very meaningful from a medical perspective, and they can all have a very large impact on what's going on in the world. But you never know, as you continue to grow and develop, your interests grow and develop, that might change, and that's okay too. So we're kind of way ahead of ourselves in residency post-medical school, so we're going to kind of go ahead and back it up a little bit to where we're at now. So I heard a lot of questions about getting into an undergrad program. What can you do to get into a good undergrad program? And then how does that undergrad program play into getting into a good medical school, right? So with where you're at now, There's all kinds of volunteer opportunities that you can do, different things of that nature. Like she said, you don't want to just do something to check a box so that it's, just looks good on your college application, that kind of stuff. But a lot of hospitals and things like that out there have volunteer opportunities, things that you can do to get involved, get your hands on, make a difference. So just kind of something to think about. Now, with where we're at right now, I'm assuming from a GPA standpoint, everybody here, we're all pretty smart people, right? We're here on a Saturday. We know what we want to do. We're kind of at the top of our game from a educational perspective. So one of the things that we need to look at is competitiveness. So knowing that you're on the track that you want to be on, it's going to be very competitive. There's a lot of people out there that talk about wanting to get into healthcare, wanting to become physicians. Once they become licensed as physicians or graduate medical school, they want to be a certain type of resident and a certain type of specialist. So we have to make sure that we're really building ourselves up to market ourselves as best that we can. So once you're into your undergrad program, you're going through your undergrad program. Like you said, you're taking your MCATs in year 4. Who's familiar with kind of like what the MCAT is or how the kind of the grading of that works? Have we kind of seen it just from like a high level? Do we know anything about it?
Isn't it just basically like testing your entire knowledge of like medical, anything in science relating to medicine? Like it's just like it's kind of like the LSAT for medicine.
Yeah, more or less. Did anybody else have something they wanted to throw on that? I mean, that was pretty close. But basically the way that it breaks down, so you understand the test itself, but understanding how it scores and how those scores, in addition to your GPA and different things like that you've done in your undergrad program, all kind of build into a complete package to go through and make you competitive for medical school. Very important. So when you take your MCAT exam, you're going to get a couple different scores. It's not just going to be like a pass-fail. It's not going to be a letter grade. So you're going to have an overall composite score that's the average of 4 or 5 different areas, right? So you'll have your overall composite score, and then of each of the individual areas, you'll have an individual line score. So you want to have the highest line scores that you can, and then of the composite of that, you want to have the highest overall goal on top of that. So that's going to be very important, kind of playing into getting into medical school along with your extracurriculars and everything else. But one thing that people don't always emphasize on that I really like that the former physician said or that the physician before me said before she got up here, we're not always prepared to fail. Right now, we're in a nice little bubble where we have, cheerleaders all around us telling us that we are, the absolute, best thing since sliced bread. We're the smartest person we've ever seen. We have family members, we have educators, all those different things encouraging us to be our best, and we are our best. But once you get to medical school, everybody there was the best in their class, right? So now that you've gone from the very top, the top has essentially become the average. So what have you done to kind of distinguish yourself to get in there? You've done all this work to get into medical school. You know what I mean? So you just got to be up there and kind of on your game as much as you can. So once you get to medical school, that's where something that we do comes in. So the Army Medical Department has a lot of different opportunities that I'm going to talk to you about here once you've gotten all the way up to medical school. And I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that we can do to help you out with that. So just kind of like by a show of hands, who knew that the Army has their own fully functional internal healthcare system? And it's one of the largest healthcare systems in the world, just spread out all over the U.S., all over some of the places that we have some of our bases overseas in Europe and different things like that. I see a couple hands going up. Okay, so do we know anybody that's maybe been in like military healthcare before, or we've just kind of had some exposure to it through different classes or speakers? What have we heard about it? Not a lot? That's okay. That's okay. So basically, the Army has some of the finest physicians in the world, and we have a scholarship that helps you pay for all of medical school, all 4 years of medical school. It also provides a housing stipend, and it's any U.S. accredited medical school that you get accepted to. So if you're just working, you just knock it out of the park in your undergrad program, you kill it on the MCATs, you get accepted to an Ivy League medical school, Yale, Harvard, whatever it might be, we're going to pay for 4 years of medical school, all 4 years. So in some regards, you don't have to worry about having that position to work and provide a little bit of extra money for you. You don't have to look at putting your families into a position where they're going to incur like a financial hardship. You don't have to go out and take out crushing student loans and different things like that. Just from a show of hands, does anybody know what the average cost of a student loan amount is for 4 years of medical school? Just kind of average across the board? Let me get a big guess, or let me get a couple guesses. And there's no right or wrong number, my friend.
It's like 44, like, I think it's like 44,000 for 4 years.
44. I'm sorry, you said 44,000 per year or total?
Per year, all 4 years.
You've underbid just a little bit, but that's okay. We're on the right track.
5 million?
5 million. Okay, now we've overshot. You're going to have about 15 different specialties at that point. So, but yeah, okay. So somewhere between 44,000 and 5 million. $500,000. Now we're getting there. So when you're talking about an Ivy League education, you're talking about in the realm of $500,000. So if you're, you're at the Harvards and the Yales and the Cornells of the world, that type of thing. Now, if you're not at a specific Ivy League college, but still a good, notable medical school, what do we think? So we're up at the top around 500,000. What do we think like a middle of the road cost for medical school might be? Yeah, right there. It's anywhere from about $200,000 to $400,000, just depending on the state, the program, the name recognition, that type of thing. But that all also plays into your residency. So where you go to school is important to becoming the type of physician that you want, because that name recognition is there. So who knows roughly, so if you were to take out, let's just go in the middle somewhere, let's say $350,000, what amount of time do you think it would take the average physician to pay that off? 15, 20? Yeah, that's about right. So when you think about it, you go through, you've paid all this, and that's just for medical school. So if you've already taken out, student loans for your undergrad program, if you've done any kind of graduate education in the middle, you could already be coming into that with anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 worth of loans on top of what you're going to go to medical school. We don't want you to have to do that. We want to make sure that if you have the grades, if you have the mind, if you have the drive to be able to go through and qualify for these programs, that you can come out, you can start practicing, and you don't have the burden of having to split your salary in half. So, not necessarily always the driving factor, but physicians in general make a good amount of money, right? But once you add loans onto that for your first 10 to 15 years, you've cut almost 25% of your salary right there off. And that's before you start paying for things like malpractice insurance, things of that nature. So, you might only be making for the first couple of years half of what you think a doctor would make. And that's, once you get your specialty done. Does anybody know what residents get paid or anything about what a resident's quality of life is? Does anybody know anybody that's gone through a medical residency? Okay, fantastic. That's fine. So basically, once you graduate med school, you match into your residency or your specialty, and you're going through a couple of years of training like that. It's a lot of work. You're not going to have time to do anything but. There's times when medical residents sleep at the hospital. There's some states that have literally passed laws about how many hours you can legally work a medical resident. So it can be a very overwhelming, challenging time in your life. So you're not going to have time to work second positions, do side hustles, all that kind of stuff. So with the Army Medical HPSP Scholarship, what that stands for is Health Professions Scholarship Program for medical school. You're going to come to us with all the accumulation of everything that we've just talked about, right? So you're going to come and you're going to say, hey, Ryan, I heard that the Army will pay for medical school. What can you do for me? Absolutely, we 100% can. So the first thing that we're going to look at when qualifying for the scholarship is, what is your undergrad GPA? For the scholarship, you need to have a minimum of a 3.2, but typically the minimum is not always competitive. So even though it checks the box for you to be able to step in and apply, there's a fixed amount of scholarships, and there's typically more applicants than there are scholarships available. So we start looking at all this stuff, right? We start looking at your MCAT scores. So for your MCAT score, you have to have a composite score of at least 500 to be able to come through and apply for our program. And we also look at the individual line scores. So your line scores at a minimum all have to be 124 or above, and you have to have an overall composite score of 500. The reason that we have high standards for the scholarship is that our physicians are taking care of military personnel and their families all over the country and all over the world. We don't want middle-of-the-road doctors. With the people that we're taking care of, we're looking for the absolute best of the best as far as physicians go. So what happens is, you come, we talk to you about the requirements. We talk to you about a few different things about legal background and things like that, because we want to make sure that we're getting in the best type of people that we can. And then from there, if you're accepted, you're going to go to medical school. We're going to pay for all 4 years. So no student loans. The Army pays it direct. You don't have to worry about like paying the school every month, anything like that. So that takes that load off of your plate right there. We're also going to pay you $2,700 a month direct to you every single month. That's just your personal money. We don't want you to have to work. We don't want you to have additional burdens. We just want you to focus on medical school, become the absolute best physician that you can be. So once you have come through and you've finished medical school, actually, I skipped over one thing. We're also going to pay for all of your books and supplies. So as far as books and supplies go, anything that's on that syllabus, we're going to pay for. If we need books, if we need virtual books, if your syllabus says, I need a laptop or an iPad, we're going to buy you a laptop or an iPad. Whatever the school says that you need. If the school says that it's mandatory for you to have health insurance, then as long as it's on that as a requirement for the school, we're going to pay for health insurance while you're in school. That'll vary a little bit from school to school. Some schools require it, some schools don't. But if it's a stated cost of the school, we're going to make sure that we go ahead and pay for that so that we can make sure that you're in there doing everything that you need to do. Now, once medical school is over and we're starting to look at what we want to specialize in, just like what we were all talking about, who has an idea how competitive it is as a civilian just going through regular college and then going into the civilian match process? If you want to be in, what were some of the higher ones that we talked about? Neuroscience, anything in a surgical specialty, anything like that. Do we have any idea kind of how competitive that is? Because those are very popular residencies. A lot of people want to go into those. Surgery and dermatology usually have some of the highest paying from a monetary standpoint position, and those ones are very, very competitive. So it's a lot more competitive going through the civilian side than it is going through the Army side. Once you finish your residency, once you finish medical school and you come into to residency, you have a significantly higher chance of getting your first choice residency going through the Army medical system because we conduct our specialties in-house. We have our own training hospitals where we develop and home grow all of our doctors. And all of their specific specialties. We get a lot of questions sometimes around what's the accreditation. If I go through and do this for the Army, once my time with the Army as a physician is up, am I still able to get out? Do I still have the same type of licensure? Is there any additional coursework or anything like that? It's 100% the same. They're accredited by the exact same GME organization. You have the exact same requirements to do ongoing education every year to make sure that you're staying current with techniques, practices, things like that that are being developed. So yeah, you'll have a higher first choice match rate, but once you get to residency, Now you're a captain in the United States Army Medical Corps. So you're getting a full salary as an Army captain, full health insurance, all of your housing and everything paid for. There's no charge for any kind of residency education, anything like that. It's all hands-on, and it's a lot different than the civilian side because we don't work you to death trying to make you learn everything and cram it into your brain. Just like the prior speaker was talking about, you can only stay focused for so long. Your brain can only retain so much information in a certain amount of time. So you're basically going to be working a regular day in the hospital. So you're going to come in, you're going to be with a group of physicians that are already licensed and specialized in that area. You're going to have hands-on training in the morning. You're going to participate in grand rounds, anything like that you might do as a normal resident in your specialty. And then you're going to go home for the evening, and then you're going to come back and do it the next day. So from an education and retention standpoint, the Army Medical Residency Program is hands down better. You're not going to find anything like it because you're only competing with other Army HPSP scholars. So you only have to compete with other people who are coming through the same program as opposed to the whole population at large. So people that did not go through the Army program can't come in and apply after the fact for an Army residency. We get phone calls like that all the time. Hey, I just graduated medical school. I'd like to apply for residency to become an Army psychiatrist, thoracic surgeon, whatever it might be, anything like that. Can't do it. So it's better for you from that standpoint as well. So you're going to come out with no debt. We're literally going to pay you the housing stipend while you're going through medical school. We're going to make sure all your books and supplies are paid for. Once you match into your residency, which you're most likely to get your first choice, if not, highly likely to get your second choice. It is competitive, so you don't always get your first choice, but higher chance. Then we're going to drop you right in. An Army captain makes more than a typical medical resident. So as a resident, you're not thinking of necessarily making what you think of as doctor money yet, right? So once you go through, you finish your residency, then you come to work for us. So you don't have to come find another hospital organization to work for. You don't have to worry about trying to work for someone's private practice. You're going to come and you're going to work for us in one of our hospitals as that specific type of physician. Now, I get some questions sometimes too. Hey Ryan, I want to be a physician. This scholarship sounds great, but if I become an Army doctor, I come in and I'm doing whatever physician, am I going to have to jump out of helicopters? Am I going to have to kick doors? Am I going to have to do all this stuff? Absolutely not. Those are your patients. So your job is to make sure that we are taking care of the healthcare, rehabilitation, things like that needs of those service members and their families so we can get them out to do what they need to do. So there's no scenario where we, invest $500,000 in you and then we just decide, I think they'd be a great tanker. That never happens. So anyway, I know I've just been kind of rambling on here for a little bit, saying a few things. So let me just pause here real quick. What kind of questions about the scholarship, the residency match, the coverage, anything like that do you have that I might be able to answer some questions about? Please.
Yeah, when you're working, like as a medic, do you have to move a lot to different places?
So yeah, that's a great question. So what'll happen is where you go for residency post-medical school, I'm going to kind of take this at a couple different angles here. Our different residencies, not every single hospital in the Army has every single residency, just like it does on the civilian side. We do certain residencies, certain places. So depending on what you match into, that will depend on where you go to residency. Now, what we call your payback service time for the scholarship, it is typically 1 year of service for 1 year of scholarship. So post-residency, you would owe us 4 years working for the Army in that specialty. Now, as part of the application process, you get to pick a top 3 places that you think you might be interested in doing that service. So once you get out on a 3 or a 4 year commitment, you're typically not going to move from wherever you do your duty at. So you'll finish your residency, then you'll go to wherever your assignment's going to be, and you'll typically be there for 4 years if you only do the 4 years and get out, which you can do. Now, it's about 50-50. Some people come through and they decide, hey, I really like being an Army physician. I don't have to pay for malpractice insurance. I get leadership opportunities within the hospital. I might be running a section. I might, be chief of a specific area. Eventually I might be moving up into the leadership side of the hospital, and that's very appealing to some people, as well as different fellowships and things like that for additional training that we have available. So if you do that, just like on the civilian side, they're going to want to offer you opportunities to stay. So there's going to be retention benefits in the form of large bonuses and things like that. So I would say like a cardiologist right now, if your 4 years was up, you're a cardiologist and you wanted to stay for 4 more years, it's roughly a $600,000 bonus just for retention before you start getting into salaries and things like that. So there's times when you might like hop on Google and say, hey, what does an Army doctor make? And you're going to look at it and you're going to see it and like, oh, you know what? It looks like in the Army that makes a lot less than what this would be on the civilian side, post-residency and all that kind of stuff. So the way that we combat that, because that is what the internet says, but the internet doesn't tell the whole story. So the reason we have these high dollar bonuses and things like that, we can't negotiate a salary with you specifically because it's based off of the funding for the Department of Defense that's set by Congress every year. So there's like a set amount that each rank makes. But we can offer retention bonuses and things like that. So what'll happen is on the medical side, we might offer you a $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 bonus for 3 years, and that's the offset. That's how we even it out and make sure that we're keeping you competitive with your peers. Because it's great to have like a feel-good motivator, but it's also nice to know that you're on pace with your peers from a compensation standpoint as far as that goes. Now, once those 4 years are up, then they're going to take a look at you, and we'll also do this as part of the application process. Get to pick top 3 places that you would like to go, anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world. And that kind of varies from place to place based off of what your motivators are. And we can work with you. It's not my job to put anyone any one specific place. So what'll happen is you might say, hey, I'd like a really unique opportunity. I might want to go to Landstuhl Army Hospital in Germany and do my service in Europe, work as a doctor there for 4 years, be immersed in another culture, get to go through and experience different countries, things like that. I was stationed in Germany for 6 years and I absolutely loved it. Experience of a lifetime. Other people might want to stay close to home. So we might say, hey, where is home? What are the bases that are closest to there? And we can take a look at that. Some places, some people are interested in a little bit more of like a resume builder, and you want to go somewhere a little bit more prestigious with name recognition, like Walter Reed Army Hospital out on the East Coast. So the motivators are different for everybody, but we have a lot of different opportunities nationwide and worldwide, just depending on what it is that you want to do. But that'll typically change in 3 and 4 year blocks. So once you get somewhere, you're typically there for 3 or 4 years, and then they'll look at moving you at that point. Yep. Please.
Are there similar programs within the Air Force and Navy?
There are similar programs within the Air Force and Navy. We've all kind of got our own like little spin to it as far as that goes. So as far as what the scholarship covers, the scholarship itself is the same. So it's 1 for 1 year of service. The $2,700 stipend is there. The books and supplies are there. Where it starts to vary a little bit is how they go about utilizing you post-graduation. So like with the Army, once you graduate medical school, we send you straight to residency. There's no gap or anything in between there. With the Navy and the Air Force, it's my understanding that you do 1 year as what we call a general practitioner. So you're a licensed physician doing general practice, and then at the end of that year, then they send you to residency after that. So from that standpoint, you're doing essentially like an extra year on top of the 1 for 1 payback. Now these change all the time, so feel free to update. I'm not in the Army and the Navy, I don't follow the Air Force and the Navy super close, but I know they do have competitive programs. So feel free to look into those. But I will tell you from a first choice standpoint, the Army is the size of the other 3 branches combined. So what that means is we have the most positions for doctors, we have the most residency opportunities available. As far as where you might want to go or be stationed, we have more bases and opportunities than anywhere else. as far as that goes. So there's pros and cons to all of them. Not just saying that because I'm partial, because I'm in the Army or partial. I do truly believe that overall, big picture, it offers the best presentation. But you know, everybody's motivators are a little bit different. Yeah, please.
How early can we start? And like, how do we sign up?
Applying for the scholarship? So there's a couple different ways that you can go about it. So you can't apply for the scholarship until you're in about your fourth year of medical, or excuse me, your fourth year of your undergrad. Reason being is we can't let you defer the scholarship like different years once you're selected. So once you're selected, you have to be going to medical school in the upcoming cycle. So you don't have to be accepted to medical school yet. You just have to be in the current application process. So what would happen is you would come to us. We'd make sure you meet all the qualifications with GPA, MCAT scores, all that kind of stuff. And then you would give us a list of all the medical schools that you would apply to that we use as like a placeholder. We can still get you selected and approved for the scholarship. Once you get accepted, you bring us that letter of acceptance, and we drop it in your file, and then you're good to go. Now, prior to that, if you are interested in getting additional education, experience, things like that, I don't recruit for these specific programs, but I can point you in the right direction. There's things that you can do at the like 17, 18-year-old age in the specific medical setting. So we have positions in the Army Reserve for like field medics, which is the equivalent of an EMT for us. All kinds of medical specialties. So like I'm a behavioral health guy by trade. My degree is in psychology. I've worked with some of the best psychiatrists I've ever seen on both the military and the civilian side. I've been a part of a lot of different medical teams that work together as a group with a lot of different physicians. So I've had a lot of exposure to a lot of different things. But when we're talking about building your resume and things like that, there's things from the undergrad standpoint as far as tuition assistance and GI Bill, things like that, while you're in the reserve that can help you out. One, giving you experience that you can put on your resume to medical school, and two, kind of offset the cost of the undergrad program itself before you get to us. So it just depends on if you want to start now and get entry-level experience in healthcare and kind of build your knowledge base as you go along, or if you want to wait until your fourth year of medical school and then come back and apply for the scholarship. Like, you don't have to do anything prior to that military related as like a prerequisite or anything. But the opportunity's there. Who else? Please.
As a parent, obviously,
Yes, ma'am. I love these perspectives.
we have different concerns. So,
Absolutely.
Say he's doing his undergrad and is applying to the Army to do
Uh-huh.
the medical part of the program. Does he have to get involved in the Army training side, or is it a straight shot straight through medical school without, and he doesn't mix with the regular Army training?
So that's a great question. So there's kind of some different parts to it. So I'll start right at the beginning. So let's just say they're in their fourth year of medical school, right? They're currently applying. While they're in medical school, there's no requirement whatsoever to do Army stuff. So it's not like they're in the reserves or anything like that. They don't have any type of commitment or training. All they're doing is going to medical school and getting paid. Now, once they graduate from medical school, but before they start residency, there are two different trainings that all Army medical officers go to, but they're specific to Army medical officers. So it's different than what like an infantry officer or somebody that has a combat-related job would go through. So just to back up, does anybody know anybody that's gone through like a traditional Army basic training or other branch maybe, or maybe we've seen some military movies where they're at basic training. You got like a guy in a big hat and he's like yelling at you and all that kind of stuff?
Well, they're called UNC drill sergeants, and we recently went into Air National Guard in Channel Islands, and they kind of showed us.
Yeah, it was like a ROTC program? Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, that's a little bit different program. That's not necessarily all healthcare related. You can be an ROTC and come through. I can readdress that in a minute. It's actually better that you don't. If you long-term, if you think you want to do healthcare, I'll tell you why in a minute. But yeah, so what'll happen is they'll go to these first 2 medical specific trainings. They're both roughly about 7 weeks long. They get paid the whole time they're there, full health care, all that kind of stuff. Their lodging, all that stuff's included. So the first one, that's the closest to anything like maybe what you've seen in a movie that they're going to go through, but they're not like sleeping in bunk beds. There's not drill sergeants, different things like that. So one of them is at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, and that's where our overall flagship healthcare center is. So that's our main teaching hospital. That's where all of our technician level positions go for training, that type of stuff. So with that one, I call that one kind of your introduction to the Army culture. So you do need to go into it with a certain amount of fitness. They are going to take you and do exercise and things like that. You're going to have exposure to some different Army tasks, but it's not for the purpose of like training you to do them. It's more to understand the patient population that you're going to be working with, so that you don't get to where you're going and have a culture shock. So like you need to know the right way to wear the uniform. You need to know like how the rank structure works, and just have kind of like a basic understanding. So that's a couple weeks long. During that, it changes a little bit from class to class, but they either have a contracted hotel room on the base, so they have their own private like little dwelling. So they go in the morning, they do their tasks, they'll do the morning workout, they'll get released for lunch, they'll come back. The second one is more healthcare focused. So once they get to that one, and they teach you the Army at a high level, then they want to teach you Army healthcare. So you're going to learn all about our major healthcare organizations and breakdowns, specifically starting with the flagship in San Antonio, kind of where all of our hospitals are broken down, different things like how we go about practicing. Does everybody know what HIPAA is from a security perspective? If I say HIPAA level information, everybody knows what I'm talking about? Okay, so like how we would go about protecting that in a field environment versus in a hospital. You're going to be working in our hospitals during that part of the course, just kind of learning, how our hospitals function, how all the different pieces of the puzzle fit together, from surgery to psychiatry to to pediatrics, all that different kind of stuff. And then from there you start residency. But they're not going to be doing like super intense training where they're like, things that are going to get them hurt, jumping out of helicopters and all that kind of thing. So did that answer your question, or can I go into it a little bit more? So it's drastically different from basic training. And the only other people they're going to be with, they're going to be surrounded by a variety of different healthcare people. Some of them are going to be scholarship applicants, and some of them are going to be people that have already graduated and are fully licensed and are essentially being direct hired. So they could be with, physical therapists, occupational therapists, nurses, that kind of thing. It's more of like a general medical training to learn big picture, just kind of how everybody works together. You're very welcome, ma'am. Who else? My friend.
Can you explain more about the ROTC and why that's not a great way to go?
Absolutely. So ROTC is a great program. Especially if this ends up on the internet. I'm not bad enough on the Army ROTC program. But so our ROTC is a fantastic program. So what it stands for is Reserve Officer Training and Commissioning. So when you go through that, that's designed to make you a general Army officer, not specifically a healthcare officer. So when you go through that, that has its own standards. And what happens is ROTC has its own commitment. So once you finish ROTC, you have a certain amount of time that you have to work either on active duty or reserve in whatever branch of the Army that they send you to. So that could be infantry, that could be IT related, a million different things. So you're not necessarily focused specifically on the healthcare track. Now there are people that come out of ROTC to do that, but like I was telling you, the scholarship has its own payback time at the end, so you work for us for a couple years. So if you do both programs, then you get both service obligations. So if you come out of ROTC owing, I don't know the exact commitment off the top of my head because that's not my program, it's either 4 or 8 years. So if you do ROTC, you have that commitment, and then you come over and do the scholarship with us, you can do that, but then you get that commitment. So instead of owing us 4 years as a doctor, now you owe us anywhere from like 8 to 10 years post-graduation because they stack. So it's not necessarily that it's a bad program. If you think that you want to do the Army as a career, doesn't matter at all. But yeah, the only reason that they don't always work together is because you can incur extra time because you're doing 2 programs, so there's 2 commitments, if that makes sense. Okay. Any other questions for me? Okay. Well then, with that being said, I'm going to stop boring you guys, pacing back and forth across the stage here. We're going to get into a little bit of a hands-on activity. Real quick before I do that, we're going to do a quick Q&A. I've got some handouts here. Okay, I'm getting too old to be jumping off a stage, so I had to do that slow. I've been in the Army a long time. So real quick, who can tell me what the composite MCAT score is to be able to apply for the scholarship? Anybody? Sorry, 500. Fantastic. How's our catching skills? How's our catching skills? Okay, I was going to say I can walk over there. That's a Bluetooth speaker. It's not a Bose, but it'll get the job done. So I've got those all over my desks. Who remembers what the minimum line score is to be competitive? 124. Fantastic. Oh, I'm sorry, I grabbed the wrong thing. I've got some of those for everybody. That is a phone charging bank. So you just kind of charge it up, be able to check your TikToks and all kinds of stuff. You'll never be unplugged. Let's see. All right, final question. Let's make it a good one. When are you eligible to come and start applying for the scholarship program itself?
After you graduate your undergrad.
Close. So I still got something for you. Okay, I'm gonna let you both take a stab at it. Okay, so white shirt and my friend right here.
4th year of your undergrad.
4th year undergrad, absolutely. So basically current application cycle. So when you're starting to go through there. All right, so let's see. Phone bank. All right, speaker for you here, my friend. All right, so now we're going to get into a hands-on activity. I'm going to turn it over here to Saran Mokielu. It has been a pleasure speaking with you. If anybody has any questions, just feel free to pull me aside. I'll be happy to talk with you. Have a great day, everybody.
How's it going? So, I am Staff Sergeant Mucciolo, Justin. You can call me Justin. I've been a combat medic for just about 12 years now. So I have a lot of experience and a lot of experience instructing. So, actually, I'm going to be leaving here to go down there to Fort Sam Houston, and I'm going to be instructing new medical personnel as they're coming into the military. It's awesome that you're all excited about going into a medical program, becoming doctors. But today I want you to leave here knowing just a little bit more about what you can do at your current level to save someone's life. All right? So does anyone know how we approach treating someone that has been recently injured, whether it be in a massive trauma from a car accident, a gunshot wound, massive bleeding, fell off a roof?
Basically, we go up to them and ask them, like, what you remember
Yeah, so asking them is absolutely one of the first things that we're going to do. But before you do that, what I want you to do is I want you to make sure that the scene is safe, right? I don't want to run out there and make myself a victim as well, because what good am I doing to anyone else if I then, especially me, you don't want to have to carry me out of anywhere, all right? So, like, if I go there and I get injured because someone's still shooting, then I'm not going to be any benefit, right? Or if there's still high traffic coming on, I need to secure that scene. The other thing I need to do is I need to notify someone that I'm going to need help to remove this person and get them to safety, right? So the two things I'm going to do first is my scene safe? Hey, go call for help. I'm going to help this person, okay? That's how I'm going to approach my casualty. After that, I'm going to go up and I'm going to see if I can get any information from them or a bystander. So, hey, what happened? Did you see what happened? And then after that, I'm going to start doing a visual survey. Sorry, I recently ruptured my vocal cord, so it's a little hard for me to speak, but if you can't understand anything I say, just raise your hand and I'll try and repeat myself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a visual blood sweep. right? So I'm gonna look in the places that are most likely to exsanguinate fastest. Exsanguination is gonna be just rapid blood loss, right? Massive hemorrhage. So I'm gonna look at the neck, I'm gonna look at the armpits, and I'm gonna look at the groin, right? Because that's where the thickest arteries are going to be that are incompressible areas, okay? When I wanna stop bleeding, if it's in the torso, I'm not gonna really be able to do too much about it unless I'm in a surgical setting. But if I have a limb, I can do something like a tourniquet. I can wrap up a t-shirt, create some kind of pressure dressing. I can do something to save that person's life if it's on a limb. So going back to what I was saying before was, how do we approach this? We first approach it making sure the scene is safe, asking someone to call for help, and then seeing what this person is doing. But then we approach everything in medicine, you'll learn, in an algorithm. So the algorithm that we use for, we use everything in medicine as an algorithm, right? So the algorithm that we use for treating trauma casualties is called MARCH. Actually goes into March pause, but right now we're just going to talk about MARCH. What MARCH is massive hemorrhage, airway, respiration, circulation, hypothermia, and head trauma, okay? There's a reason that we go in that order, and it's because it's the fastest treatable ways that we found that people are likely to expire, right? So the largest percentage of people that are dying from massive hemorrhage, untreated. Second largest is going to be from an airway obstruction of some type. Then a respiration issue. So think of the difference between airway and respiration as being airway is from here to here, and respiration is the structure of the chest, okay? So, and then circulation, are they moving blood? Because blood is transporting both oxygen, nutrients, and basically everything your body needs to, and obviously also the things that your body's trying to discard, like carbon dioxide, are all being circulated throughout your body. And then head trauma and hypothermia. And these are all things that we can prevent with what we have, right? Especially if you have one of those AED kits, the red bags that are in like the white boxes on the walls. A lot of times those have these tourniquets in them. And nowadays it couldn't be more important for you to learn how to use one of these quickly. So, hemorrhage. If I'm approaching someone, I look in their neck, armpits, or groin, and I notice that they're bleeding significantly. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to immediately stop there, and I'm going to start to treat that injury, okay? And the way I'm going to treat it is I'm going to take a piece of gauze. If I don't have a lot of those kits that I was talking about, they'll also have what's called combat gauze in them. Combat gauze is the same thing as this, except it's impregnated with something called kaolin. And what kaolin does is it basically improves the clotting factor, or assists the clotting factor to make it start working a little bit faster. So the kaolin, the combat gauze also has a little radio opaque line in it. So if you start putting it into a wound, when they x-ray the person, it's gonna show up on an x-ray, okay? So now I'm gonna very quickly demonstrate how I would go ahead and wrap an injury if someone had a armpit, neck, or groin injury. So basically, I have a gunshot wound to the armpit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take, if it's not combat gauze, any kind of gauze, and I'm going to try and create a ball, okay? The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take the end of it, I'm going to twist my fingers, and I'm going to start placing pressure, okay? And as I'm holding pressure, constant pressure, I'm going to take my other hand, and I'm going to feed it into that hole. And I'm going to keep doing that until I'm above the level of the skin. And then I'm going to take the rest of it. I'm going to place it right on top. I'm going to hold pressure. I'm going to hold pressure for about 3 minutes. That 3 minutes is going to allow the kaolin in the combat gauze to start working. Or it's going to help this to form a little bit of a clot on the inside of the bandage. But now that this clot, basically a scab, is on top of that wound, I have to make sure it stays there with enough pressure that the back pressure of the blood inside the vessel isn't going to pop this off, right, and start bleeding again. So I'm holding this in place. I'm going to then take a bandage, can be something as simple as an ACE wrap, those tan wraps that we use when we sprain our ankle playing volleyball, whatever it might be. I'm going to, while maintaining pressure, if I can do it myself, then I'll do it myself. If not, have someone help you. Maintain pressure. I'm going to wrap this. And some of them will have these type of bandages instead of an ACE wrap. This is called an Israeli bandage because that's who invented them. But basically, if you don't have this thing, it doesn't matter. But this, when you do it, you go around once, then you go in the opposite direction, and it applies additional pressure onto that bandage, okay? But I'm gonna act as if it wasn't because it's more common to see just the ACE wrap. Okay, so now I've wrapped once around. I'm gonna go below. Below, and then above, okay? And then once I've gone all the way through, these Israeli bandages also have like a string sewn through them so that they don't unroll on you. Once I've gone around 2 to 3 times, I'm gonna take the rest, and whenever I get to the top, I'm gonna pull, and then I'm gonna hold it in place. And when I get to the bottom, I'm gonna pull. When I get to the top, I'm gonna pull. When I get to the bottom, I'm gonna pull. Okay, and then the point of me doing it that way is so that, feel that. Feels like a lot of pressure, right? All right, good. You hear that? That sound means that the gauze is held under enough pressure that it doesn't matter exactly how much pressure. If it's a femoral artery, it's not gonna pop that clot, okay? So I've treated my hemorrhage. So what's next in the March algorithm? Airway, perfect. Someone was listening. So airway, remember that's from here to here. First thing I can do, easiest thing I can do, is just adjust it. Put the person into a neutral position and then tilt their head just slightly back so I can get their tongue out of their airway. Because the number one obstruction for an airway is your tongue. It's about a third the size of your trachea, and your trachea is only about the same thickness as your thumb. So by tilting the head slightly back without really maneuvering the neck too much in case there was a neck injury, we can get some of that out of the way. Besides that, without having additional equipment, there's not gonna be much you can do about it, all right? In a safe environment, there's another thing that you can do besides just tilting the head. You can also do what's called a jaw thrust. And a jaw thrust, basically you're gonna take your thumbs and you're gonna place them right here. You're gonna take these fingers and the flat part of your jaw, you're just gonna slide them forward. And you'll feel your jaw shift if you do that. And it just shifts slightly forward. That's gonna help to open up that airway. All right, so we've dealt with airway, the massive hemorrhage. So now we're gonna deal with the structure of the chest. So what can we do if someone was shot in the chest? And all I have is the equipment on this table. Think about movies, anything. Okay, Yeah, I mean, CPR, when are we going to be doing CPR? Is it just because someone's unconscious? Yeah, yeah. So we're not going to just go do, like, oh, they passed out because they stood up too fast. I'm not doing CPR on that guy. I'm first going to check their pulses, right? So now that is not always the case. If you walk up on someone and they're unconscious and you don't know why, then there's some indicators that might say, hey, I might need to think about doing CPR. They might have gotten electrocuted or something like that, right? I'm still going to check their pulse first, though. We have this stuff on the table, right? So I see a hole in someone's chest. I can take anything occlusive. Occlusive means the air is not going to travel through it. So this plastic isn't going to have any air travel through it, right? So what I can do is I can rip this open, lay it flat, and place the wound directly in the center of this. And then I tape down on all four sides. One, and I want the tape to extend halfway onto the plastic and halfway beyond the plastic. But now one of the things that has to happen is I have to pay attention, all right? Because when someone has a hole in their chest, not only is air getting out, but it's also getting in. So that means that there's pressure building up inside that chest cavity, right? The entire time until I have this taped down on all four sides. Because air is getting in every time they inhale, creating a vacuum in that space. So I just tape down all four sides. Just raise your hand if I need to stop, because I know I'll talk forever. That vacuum is going to pull air into that hole, and then it's going to start to put pressure on the lung, because the air pocket is building outside the lung and inside the chest wall. As it puts pressure on the lung, it's going to collapse it. Then it's going to start to put pressure on the other lung. And then after it collapses that lung, it's going to start to squeeze the heart, which means the heart isn't able to fully expand and contract, which means that even that little bit of air that's left in your blood is not able to circulate, okay? So what does that mean? That means that if I start to notice that this person is having respiratory distress, difficulty breathing, that is progressing over time, I need to get that air out of that person's chest. There's only a couple ways that you can do this, and at your level, one of the ways is just to lift this up. It's called burping the wound and then placing it back. It's not foolproof. It's not going to last forever. But if I don't do that, this person's going to die in minutes. And I'm going to make a mess. All right, so the other thing is I found an entrance wound. What do I also have to check for? Perfect. What do we know about entrance wounds and exit wounds comparatively? No, not you. So an entrance wound enters small and clean. An exit wound pulls all that material out and makes a much bigger hole on the backside. So if I saw a little small dot on this side, the size of a pencil eraser, I can imagine the size on the back of the hole is going to be the size of a fist. So that means if I have this material, I'm going to have to expect to make a much larger bandage for the backside. And I'm also, hopefully by this point while I'm working, someone's already en route to come move this person to a hospital, because this person's going to need a chest tube. This person's going to need needle chest decompression, thoracostomy, maybe multiple things. All right, so we did M-A-R. So C, what is C? Circulation, awesome. So there's kind of minimal things that you can do here. The number one thing is check their pulses. Do they have pulses in both of their wrists? Okay, I check. If I don't, then what I've just learned is that their blood pressure has fallen to an inadequate level to perfuse their body. So it's not sending that oxygen around their body efficiently. So that means that this person is going to need the ability to receive fluids of some type. So I have these needles here, and when we're done talking, if you want to come and give a stab at this, I just want to have one-on-one monitoring people doing this, so that way I don't have anyone stabbing themselves when I'm not paying attention. But you're more than welcome to stab these dummies when I'm done talking. So we check for radial pulses. If there are no radial pulses at your level, what you're going to do is you're going to note that, and you're going to let the people that are coming to pick this person up know, hey, when I got to this person after I treated their MAR and I got to their circulation, they had no pulses in their wrists, or they did have pulses in their wrists, because that's important too. Because if they did 2 minutes ago when I checked and they don't now, what do I know? I know they're getting worse, right? So MARC. So next one is head trauma and hypothermia. What can I do about those? Head trauma, not too much. I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm not doing neurosurgery even if I was. Not right here in the street. But what I can do is I can figure out if they have head trauma to note that and pass it along. Easy way to do it. Open the person's eyes, cover it, and then let the sun hit it. When the sun hits those eyes, they should be what's called pearl. Pupils equal, round, and reactive to light. That means both of them are going to react simultaneously, equally. If they're not doing that, if one is blown out and one is moving, then that's a concern. That means they probably have some kind of subdural hematoma or something going on in their head that I need to be concerned about, right? Okay, so I've noted that they have head trauma. But the number one most important thing that you can do once you've stopped the airway, breathing, and bleeding issues is keep this person warm. And we're not going to get into the details of it, but I do want you someday in your career to look into the triad of death. Okay, that's what we call it. And this triad, one of them, one side of the triad is hypothermia, and it's so easy to maintain, and so few people pay attention to it. We can wrap this person up with some blankets, keep them warm, and keep that blood flowing, because that is going to basically help them to form clots. If we let this person lose that body temperature, then they're going to lose their ability to form clots, which means that they're going to keep bleeding, and that's going to, again, so they're bleeding, they're having difficulty forming clots. That loss of blood is having them have difficulty maintaining their body temperature, which is making them bleed, which is making them, and it just keeps going around like that. All right, so wrap them up, keep them warm, and I hope you all have learned something today that you can walk away with and feel a little more confident when you're walking down the street. If you see someone injured, that you know what to do. All right, thank you. Any questions about what I just talked about? If not, yeah.
If they're bleeding in the head, use the same gauze.
So that's a great question. If I have someone that's bleeding from their head, what I don't want to do is put any pressure on the area. So I can wrap very loosely around it, but if anything's hanging out, I don't want to push it back in, because the brain needs a room to expand. Okay, and we have, I'm sure, a couple mothers here. You can probably remember back when your kids were babies and they got really sick, all right? And you got really scared. The fever, they fell, whatever it might be. One of the reasons that you actually have a lot more flexibility when it comes to kids is their skull isn't fused yet. So their brain has room to expand. But when we get older, our brains, our skulls close up. So there's nowhere for that pressure to go. So if we get injured and there's bleeding going on in my skull and I'm not letting any of that blood escape, then, and the brain doesn't have room to swell outside of the skull, then I'm adding pressure. That pressure is stopping circulation from going on inside the brain, which is killing it. So you'll see sometimes when people get really bad brain injuries, without even doing any brain surgery, they'll just cut a window into their skull. And that window is to allow the pressure to go out. Any other questions?
Someone gets in a car accident, you were there, and I was just talking to him, and there's a deep gash in somebody's upper arm where there's many arteries in it. But you don't have that with guys, it's the jam into somebody's arm.
You got a shirt on?
How do you take your shirt off and tie above it?
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not gonna take my shirt off, but what I will do is say, like, as long as I have any piece of fabric that I can make 2 inches wide, I can wrap it. Can you come over here real quick and just hold this out? Well, imagine that this is the upper arm. I can wrap it, tie it in a knot right above there, and then take something stiff. That's not going to happen. All right, but that's what this is for, right? Someone got a pen? All right, pen doesn't typically work unless you have like a super fancy pen, but I want to use something, a stick, a bunch of popsicle sticks tied together, and I'm going to place it here. And then I'm going to take this other, the remaining tissue, the remaining fabric here, I'm going to tie it again there. And what that's doing is giving me something to twist. And I can keep twisting it. You do it until the bright red bleeding stops. So, thank you. You'll see people when they're teaching about these tourniquets, twist no more than 3 times. The reason for that, the reason they say that is because if you twist this thing too much, then this cloth here that runs all the way through it, it gets really tall. And then it kind of collapses on itself and is less effective. But that's just because you didn't do the initial pull tight enough. But whenever you're doing any kind of tourniquet, you're always going to turn until the bleeding stops. If it's still bleeding, then it's not a tourniquet. Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay. So you absolutely don't have to run out of the room. I would like everyone, since you're at the tables, to take the tourniquet and play with it. Learn how it works, because you never know. You never know. You might need to be the one who applies this. And then if anyone wants to come up and take a shot at stabbing an IV, I'll walk you through the procedure. All right. So super easy. Just watch the pointy bit, okay? So this is a catheter. The plastic thing is a catheter. The metal thing is the needle. Notice how the needle is, there's a space between the end of the plastic and the tip of the needle, right? So that means that once I stick in and I see blood will fill this. That doesn't mean the plastic is all the way in. So what happens is, you have to stick it in, and then once I see the blood, I have to go in a little bit further. And then once I go in a little bit further, I'm going to lay this down to the level of their skin. I'm going to slide this plastic piece forward. Okay? As long as this is in, no blood is going to be squirting out of there. Okay? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pinky, I'm going to hold this, and I'm going to occlude that vein. I'm going to pull this needle out, and then I'm going to attach my line. At this point, I want you to stop and leave the needle down, and I'll pick it up. Okay? But you're all welcome to take a shot at this. one at a time, and make sure everyone's paying real close attention, because if you get stabbed, you're going to have to go to the hospital and get shots. Even though they're all sterile, but I just don't want to take any chances. So just give me 1 second. I'm going to get a cup so I can put these in.
What situation would you use this in?
Yeah, an IV.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's going to be any time that I have someone. Most frequently, you're going to see it in heat casualties. But in an IV, in a hospital, they're always going to have what's called a saline lock. And a saline lock, basically, where did I just put that? This is why we can't have nice things. All right, so look, basically this thing hangs out of your arm, right? And you can either run this directly to a tube that goes to that bag that hangs and drops fluid, or you can put a little thing that has a plastic piece on the end, and that just means, hey, I'm ready to go, right? It's just a little plastic thing hanging off, and if I need to shoot meds into it, I can, or if I need to attach an IV line to it, I can. So this will always, and a lot of times with like severe trauma, we'll have one in each arm. So that way we can use one for meds and one for fluids, okay? All right, so who wants to go first? Okay. So I'm always gonna place the arm like this. I'm going to take the needle. The needle's long on one end and pointy, and short on the other end. I'm going to point the short end towards the sky. I'm going to go 35 to 45 degrees in line with the vein, and I'm going to shoot in until I see blood. I'm going to go in a little more, lower, and advance. Okay? So I'm going to put it right here. Don't poke yourself. See the pointy part? That's going to go down. And keep everything below the needle, down here. No, keep your hand below the needle so you don't, because the worst thing that could happen is you stab through this person's skin and go on the vein right here. Yeah. The worst thing that could happen is you go into the person's skin and then poke into your hand, because I don't know who this person is, and I don't know what kind of grimy stuff they have in their blood. I definitely don't want it in my blood, you know. Okay. Very good. Yep. Awesome. All right, who's up? Come on over. All right. Now I want you to take a real close look at it and make sure you see. Are you left-handed?
I am left-handed.
Okay. So yeah, just make sure you keep everything behind where you're going to poke. This is the vein here. A cheating technique for this too is look where all the poke holes are.
You said 45-degree angle?
Yep, and you're going to want to hold it just like this. And you're going to look in between your fingers. Okay?
Look in between my fingers.
Yep, because that's where the blood's going to fill
And
there.
you said shorter side on the top?
Shorter side's going to go up. Usually the IV class is about an hour long itself. And then that class that I just taught is usually about 8 hours. So I was trying to condense it.
When you see blood, or like...
So this part will fill up with blood. That means you're in the vein. But then you need to advance a little bit.
The vein.
No, you're never going to see it on this because these aren't connected to anything. But in a real person, right now you're in those muscle, but it's okay. Don't worry, it takes practice. Awesome. You see, you can even see that go right into the vein. Cool. Who's up next?
Can I do it?
Yeah. Just before you touch that, I forgot. I told him I was going to take pictures. So just let me get one.